There hasn't been in my lifetime a movement as radical as a Bernie Sanders-led progressive movement. It took me by surprise. 2 years ago, if you were to say, hey, there's going to be a big communist element and it's going to get traction, I went, what are you talking about, Albania?
But who's a communist? Who's a communist?
Right-wingers across the country are completely losing it over actual progressives winning elections in the United States. And right at the center of that meltdown is far-right MAGA curmudgeon Bill O'Reilly. Bill O'Reilly recently appeared on Chris Cuomo's News Nation show, where he tried to label these politicians as communists. It's basically a brand new Red Scare coming from people like Bill O'Reilly, who seem determined to turn every progressive victory into some kind of communist threat. We're going to take a look at the clips from this discussion, and I have plenty of thoughts to share along the way. So let's get into it together.
All right, let's bring in Bill O'Reilly. Good to have you. Bill, last night, Dr. El Sayed wins in Michigan. His platform becomes this call and response that he does every time he speaks. Get money out of politics, put money in people's pockets, pass Medicare for all. And he says, I am a capitalist, and I care about Michigan. And he beat the Democratic incumbent that they were pushing on him from the House to run for Senate. He was outspent 8-1. He still won. You say he's a gift to Mike Rogers. How?
Well, because the Republicans will coalesce around Rogers. There's not going to be a lot of dissent in that party. There will be dissent in the Democratic precincts. Look, politicians say what they want to say. You know that. If you look back at El Sayed's previous statements about the border, about the police, it's clear the man is a radical progressive. Now, whether he's a communist or a socialist, doesn't matter much to me. He's a danger, in my opinion, to public safety. I don't care what he says. You can say anything you want if you're a politician. But what he has put out there is certainly as radical as it gets. Open borders, my God. Did he not see the Spanish thing? But
he says he's not in favor of open borders. He says he's in favor of abolishing ICE as currently constructed because they're violating the law. But I got to correct the record for the audience, right? Because he doesn't say open borders. So when you say open borders, oh my gosh, no, I don't.
The record
I don't
has
have to correct what you're saying.
5 times. No, the record has changed 5 times.
I mean, if that were the basis, there'd be a lot of lawmakers that aren't in office, and I don't know that it's changed.
I don't do the
5 times with El Sayed. I know you don't. I know you don't because we know why. Okay. We know why you don't. I wouldn't if I were you either. I know you don't.
Okay, and you'd be smart not to because it's an infantile way to analyze the news.
No, it's a way to hide from who's the president. Go ahead.
Okay, now let me make a couple of points. I'll say it started as a very, very radical person, and then he kind of morphed into not so radical. So to say and take at face value what he's saying now is a leap of faith, to use a cliche. But it doesn't really matter, does it? Because the Democratic Party, as you pointed out, doesn't like him. They don't want him. They don't want people like him. Whether he's a true radical or not, it is just spoiling the whole Democratic message. So you have to assume, and African-American votes will be big on this.
Democratic message. So you have to assume that African-American voters will be a major part of this. The Democratic Party doesn't really want him, Bill O'Reilly, because the Democratic establishment isn't interested in making any serious or meaningful change. They're basically all corporatists, ranging from center-right to right, while the Republicans have moved all the way to the far right. And that's the real problem with the Democratic establishment. They have repeatedly put their thumb on the scale to stop progressive candidates like Bernie from getting elected. They don't actually want progressives taking control. And it's not because they believe progressives can't win. The Democratic establishment would honestly rather lose elections to Republicans than allow progressives to come in and change the party.
Assume that the Democratic Party is going to fight among itself, while the Republican Party is not. They're going to coalesce around them. They're going to demonize them. They're going to say this is Bernie Sanders light. That's what they'll do. And that will drive people to the poll. Now, who wins? A lot of outside money will come in, a lot. And it's up to people to evaluate the histories of Rogers and Al Sayed. That's what you have to evaluate what they have said in the past, okay? and then make a determination, because politicians will tell you anything you want to hear, Cuomo, and you know that.
Look, I mean, if it were a veracity contest, our elections would come out very differently than they have in the near past. What I'm saying is, I don't think that analysis makes sense in the general. It makes sense in the primary. But now the Democrats, you just saw, everyone who ran against him was standing behind El Sayed. The party says they're fully with him now. And you can see that as hypocritical. You can see that as whatever you want to see it. But in the general, they have a registration advantage. It's a Democratic seat, right? Peters is abandoning the seat, right? The sitting senator. Right. And Mike Rogers is not exactly a new and shiny thing. He is a MAGA, establishment guy.
Look, I don't know much about Rogers, but I do know that the latest polls say, and they've got him either tied or within one of El Sayed. And
or up.
So it's going to be a close race.
Or up. But remember, El Sayed has been getting his ass kicked by his own party. Now that's going to change. Now they're not going to say the same things.
That will continue. That will continue.
Why?
Because the smart Democrats don't want to be tied to Bernie Sanders's.
Bill O'Reilly is absolutely wrong here. They did the same thing with Mondare, and Mondare still managed to get elected. It's not that the Democratic establishment is afraid of losing elections. It's that they're afraid of what might happen if they actually win with progressives. They don't want progressives, democratic socialists, social democrats, or whatever label you want to use for people who support policies like Medicare for all, tuition-free college, and other major changes like that. They don't want those kinds of politicians because they're too closely tied to their corporate donors, and those donors have far too much influence over what the party is willing to support.
Progressive, communist, socialist, whatever you want to label it, movement. They don't.
Well, he says he's a capitalist, but they'd rather lose a Senate seat.
Loser.
They'd rather lose a Senate seat.
There's a lot of people going to stay home. And the African-American vote, which I'm studying now, progressives do very poorly. Even in New York City, they didn't do nearly as well as they thought they would with Mandani. I don't know why exactly, but we're looking at it. But when you have a divided party against a party that is together, that is an advantage for the party that is together.
Yeah, I don't know that your assumption is right, but you're right. Being divided is harder than being united. I agree with you in a bipartisan system. What I'm saying is, it's one thing in the primary. Look, we see this all the time, which is in the primary we hate each other, but then when it's against the other guys, especially in this toxic twosome that our party politics is, we got to come together, because the last thing we want is, as Democrats would say, is another Trumper, especially in a blue seat. Well, so I don't understand that motivation.
Then I will enlighten you. There hasn't been in my lifetime a movement as radical as a Bernie Sanders-led progressive movement. It took me by surprise. 2 years ago, if you were to say, hey, there's going to be a big communist element and it's going to get traction, I went, what are you talking about, Albania?
But who's a communist? Who's a communist? Who's a communist?
Look, the means of production is what people like Mandami want to control. All you got to do is look it up, okay? The means of production. They want to control that.
Is the mayor of New York City. He's the mayor of New York City. He has done nothing to take away private property. He's taxing. He's doing other things that he said he was going to do when he was running. But this socialist thing, let alone communism, there's not a communist country on the face of the planet.
I know you don't buy it.
It's a boogeyman.
It's quite clear you don't buy it. People believe what they want to believe. But he's frozen rents, in New York City. That's the first step. Now he wants grocery stores to undercut other grocery stores. The guy is called classic Marxist person. Yesterday, it was amazing because
Bernie he's Sanders, the mayor of New York City. He's not the entire party, right? I mean, it's like you can have a guy who is out there, but and the people where he ran wanted him. No, but I'm saying that why do you think that that's going to... I know, but why do you think that that will affect all Democratic races, one mayor?
Because it's basically a radical movement. When a Bernie Sanders, who's the most dangerous man in the country, he goes out and says...
Bill O'Reilly says Bernie Sanders is the most dangerous man in the country, which is honestly an absurd thing to hear from someone who spends so much time defending Donald Trump and the MAGA movement. The idea that Bernie Sanders is somehow the biggest danger in the country is completely ridiculous. Bill O'Reilly can say whatever he wants, but that claim says far more about his political priorities than it does about Bernie Sanders.
We want to control children. Okay? We want to control children. And you're going, okay.
What does that
that's
mean?
what they do in every communist country. So they want, what that means is universal.
When did Bernie Sanders say we want to control? Yeah?
He said it yesterday. Universal child care. Okay?
Yeah.
What universal child care is you take the tyke at age 4 or 5. He goes through a system of left-wing academia. He comes out.
This is absolutely insane. People need someone to take care of their children while they are at work, you clown. Daycare is somehow radicalizing children now? No. Daycare is literally there to give parents someone they can trust to look after their kids while they go to their jobs and earn a living. This is one of the most ridiculous arguments I have heard in a long time, and considering the amount of completely crazy political nonsense I cover, that is really saying something.
Columbia University, and presto, you've got a little replicant running around spouting Bernie Sanders stuff.
You sound like a Red Scare guy from 1955.
That is what they do.
All right.
What?
Bill, thank you for making your case. It was Dusty saying I got to go. But look, I get your theory of the case. We'll see how it plays out, and we'll see it together. Thank you for being with us.
I love Chris Cuomo telling Bill O'Reilly, you sound like a Red Scare guy for 1955, because honestly, that was going to be my exact wrap-up as well. I was going to say that Bill O'Reilly would have fit in perfectly during the McCarthy era. He would have been a propagandist, a soldier for the Red Scare, one of the darkest periods in American history, and America has certainly had plenty of dark periods. But instead of looking back at that time and saying, wow, that was terrible, we were labeling people as communists when they weren't, and we should never go back to that, Bill O'Reilly seems determined to take us right back there by calling people communists all over again. And let's be honest, Bill O'Reilly was discredited a long time ago. This clown was such a mess that he eventually got fired from Fox News after all kinds of serious controversies and misconduct allegations got him into trouble. Now he's sitting here claiming that Bernie Sanders is the most dangerous person in the country, while also suggesting that daycare is somehow radicalizing children and turning them into Marxists or whatever he's trying to argue. Then he says we're witnessing the most radical movement of his lifetime, even though he constantly sims for Donald Trump and the MAGA movement, which is arguably one of the most radical political movements many of us have seen in our lifetimes. And yet, somehow Bernie Sanders is supposed to be the great danger? This is just completely ridiculous coming from Bill O'Reilly. I'm glad that Chris Cuomo at least pushed back on him a little bit. Although I wish Chris Cuomo would have gone even further and said, you know what, Bill O'Reilly, you have completely lost your credibility, and this is going to be your last appearance on my show. But we all know that's probably not going to happen. So let me know in the comments what you think about all of this. Do you really think Bernie Sanders is the most dangerous person in America when we have Donald Trump as president and an entire collection of people around him who are pushing some of the most extreme ideas in modern American politics? Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe.